Hello and welcome to the Splunk Vormetric demo. In this video, we're going to show you how to connect Vormetric to Splunk so that Splunk may receive some of the log and audit activity that is happening in Vormetric. Then we'll take a look at how we can get the Vormetric app downloaded from Splunk base and installed into Splunk. Then we'll use the Vormetric application to set up an alert inside of Splunk, and we'll test that out. And finally, we'll take a look in detail at some of the panels and charts available in the Vormetric application for Splunk. So now let's go and look at the data inputs that Splunk is set up to accept. So Splunk is able to receive log and audit information uploaded as a file, or indexing a local file, or monitoring an entire directory. It can also receive connections from systems that are sending via syslog protocols to Splunk itself, so it could either be over TCP or UDP. You can also run custom scripts that will collect data and listen for new data that might be added into a specific directory and automatically load that in. So right now we seem to have 5 inputs that were added as file inputs, and we have a couple of inputs that are being received on the different communications protocols here. Now let's go see from the Vormetric point of view what that might look like to tell Vormetric to send data to Splunk. So here we have the Vormetric screen. Vormetric does have its own logs, which you can search as well, but it doesn't have that intelligence capability that can look at activity over time to determine whether or not it's suspicious, such as what a SIM system like Splunk might do. So let's look at our log settings, and we go to log syslog. I have a couple of SIM systems configured to receive syslog information, one of which is a McAfee ESM, and the second one here is Splunk. We've selected TCP as the transport protocol for Splunk, the port number 5514, and the message format, which is RFC 5424. And here's how I add a new entry, and I can specify the name of the server, the protocol, the port number, as well as the message type. So we're all set up for sending data and activity information to Splunk itself. If I look at our logs here and refresh to see the latest activity, well, we should be able to see this activity in Splunk as well. So in this case, we're seeing some normal Oracle activity, which we've turned for which we've turned our auditing on, and therefore all this data, all this activity is being received by Splunk itself. So for example, the resource or file that it's accessing is control01.ctl in here. So that's a control file, but there will be other accesses, especially for files that contain data. Okay, so let's see how to add the Vormetric application into Splunk. It's a Vormetric app that's available at the Splunk base site, and we can do that pretty easily from the home screen here. We'll just click Find More Apps. That takes me to a search area where I can see some existing apps are there, and I'm just going to search for Vormetric. Alright, so here it is, the description for Vormetric. I click Install Free. It's ready to install. I can click the Install button. And it's done. And so now we'll say restart Splunk. Okay, restart is successful. Log back into Splunk. And it brings us back where we left off. We could just go back to home, and we see now that the Vormetric application is added here. So why don't we just go right into it? And first thing you see is an introductory screen, introduction, drill down reports, the data model, and more detailed explanations of everything. And now I can just go to the protected data access report, for example. And we could look at all events by user. And I can see there are accesses by Oracle, accesses by root, accesses by the user Splunk, which I just used for demonstration purposes, and by the user TH. So these are all events by user versus denied events by user. So you can see which ones were denied versus all accesses. We can look at the types of actions that were performed. Right, file update, file read, directory read. We can also look at accesses by host and type. I might want to increase the amount of time that I'm looking at to see if there's so many suspicious accesses. So I'll say maybe the last 4 hours. See what's happened there. So I see some activity here. There are a lot more denied events than we had before. We also see there are some faked events, fake denied, and we'll take a look at what that means a bit later. So these are all denied read events, and these are all events by host and the type of event. Event being what we've detected as the kind of access. Total accesses versus permitted, warned, faked. And then we can look at all data accessed by data source. We can look at all denied accesses by data source. Part of this matches that chart in here. And here's an interesting one to look at all events by data location. So if you know the data that you're protecting and you want to monitor exactly what's going on with that data, who's accessing it, who's doing what with that data, this chart is important so you can see all the accesses. And further, you can see all denied events by that data location. So I'm really interested in some of these activities here that have been happening against this data directory /vdata1. So why don't I drill down into that one? By clicking that bar, I could see that a search was built for me based on that denial, and looked like all these are similar. They're faked user, which means that the root user attempted to fake to become another user. So really what they did was they switched user at the command line to Oracle in this case. And they tried to access a file, mynewfile.txt, that only Oracle should have access to. And therefore, in this case, the user was denied because we detected that the user tried to switch to a different user and try to pretend they were the authorized user. What we're going to do here is drill down and look at only those that were fake user denied. I'm really interested in this activity because it's sensitive activity. So I'll want to not see just the denieds, but just the fake denieds. And here we go. So now we have a search at the deny string that shows fake user denied. I don't need this part of the search. And I'm really only interested in that directory right there. So at this point what I can do is I can create an alert based on this access, because I want to be notified immediately when some kind of suspicious activity is happening. So I'll call this my faked user. And let me check the schedule. Okay, this is going to happen in real time whenever a result matches. I want it to send an email. I'm going to send it to my Vormetric address. I'm going to use the default Splunk alert. I want to include the results, which is the listing of the event types or message packets that arrived at Splunk will be sent back packaged in a CSV file as part of the email. I can run an automatic script, but I don't think I'm not going to do that right now. I can also show it in the alert manager, and I want it to be flagged as high alert. And we can keep this blank, suppress for results, keep that blank, and then we'll click next. Oh, forgot to put .com. And next. Keep the search private, that's fine. And click finish. And now let's see what happens if we try and trigger that alert. So we'll go back to our command line. We are logged in as root right now. If we try to do a cat command to show us all the contents of the files in this data directory, it tells us we're denied. Okay, so we're root user, we're not allowed to access that, it belongs to someone else. Well, let's say I'm a very clever root user. I want to switch to the user whom I know has access to that data, and I will try the same command, cat/vdata1/*, and I'm still denied, even though I'm Oracle and I should be able to access that. Just to prove that, if I can go in directly as Oracle or log in as Oracle specifically and try and access that same directory, I should be able to, right? cat/vdata1/*, and no problem there, it appears okay. And if I go to that directory and try and do a cat of my new file.txt, I see the file comes up okay. So now we should have received some alerts from Splunk having arrived in our inbox after having tried those that suspicious activity. So what we can do is go right to our email, and we do see that there is an alert called faked user. So if I open that attachment, I should be able to see the entry that came in that was alerted upon. So if I look at the raw data here and wrap this text within here, I could see all the activity or the exact message that would have been sent to Splunk. And I could see the deny string that was part of our search, fake user denied. Further on, I can look at the activity in the context of Splunk. So I can just click the link that was provided to me in that email and view that activity within Splunk itself. And here you can see all the information about the activity itself. I could see that the process that was run was a cat process. Again, it shows I was root, faked as Oracle. And the activity I tried to do was read file, or the action. And I read a file within this guard point, or the subdirectory vdata1. I noticed data transform auto lock. Well, I ran a cat against multiple commands within that, multiple files within that directory, including this one. So that was one of the errors that showed up. And that's how you integrate Vormetric with Splunk. Now, looking at the Splunk application for Vormetric, I can actually take a look at different dashboards. So I have protected data access. We've seen this dashboard already. This shows us all events by user and all denied events by user. Right. We can also see the types of actions that were performed, all denied read events, so specific to reading files. And we can also see different types of accesses by host, events by host, and the type of event that was. So in this case, we only have one host showing. And we can also look at all the data accessed by data source, which means the source is the sender. In our case, it's a Vormetric appliance that is the source that is sending the data to Splunk. So this is essentially really all the data I have, because I've only got one example that I'm using here. But then all denied data, so it focuses that previous chart to show me only denied events. And these two charts show me events by data location. One shows all the events and the other shows all the denied events. If I look at this additional dashboard, which is the security intelligence dashboard, I could do this for the last 4 hours. Actually, I can modify them each to show last 4 hours. I can see some of the accesses here. There have been no user logins, no unauthorized agent accesses to the DSM. That means there's no agent installed anywhere trying to access our DSM without authorization. And guard point updates, if we made any changes to our guard points, there might have been a few changes. If I could look at all-time guard point updates, I'll see a lot more information. There's several areas, on several different servers and several different locations where I've made guard point changes. So all this data was retained here before I added my application, because I had already set up integration with Splunk. So I didn't have to regenerate new activity. The activity was already recorded by Splunk. Apart from the dashboards, I can search all sorts of error. Like for example, I could search for errors, specific types of activity, by severity. If I go by info, might be a lot more information. Obviously, if I'm recording very detailed access information, I can do that. In the last 4 hours, for example. And that's just another way to drill down and get to my access information. Right? In this case, I could see in the last 4 hours there have been quite a bit of activity. And here I can see the detailed activity. Going back to my searches, I can view file accesses. Let's do it over the last 4 hours. And see that the guard points that were accessed were the following. And if I drill down, I can see which accesses within each of these guard points, which files within these guard points were being accessed, and I can look at them by file and the type of activity that was performed with them. And if I go by user, so user access, I'm going to show user accesses within the last 4 hours, and I see there are various different users who accessed. Root versus root faked as Oracle are two different users, considered two different users, because this is a certain type of context. But I can see the different users that I've logged in as and tried accesses with those users. And that pretty much gives us an overview of the Vormetric security intelligence integration into Splunk. And now, to review what we've done in the Splunk Vormetric demo, we saw how easy it was to set up Vormetric to send its audit log information to Splunk so that more detailed analysis can be done and so that alerts could be set. We also saw how to get the Vormetric application from Splunk Base. It's a free application that's easily downloadable into the Splunk environment. We set up an alert to trap any activity that might be suspicious, especially with regards to an administrator changing users to an authorized user. And finally, we took a look at some of the detailed panels and charts that are available in the application. Thank you for joining me.